This successful testimonial is a perfect example of how you can change your entire world and create the world that you want by changing your concept of yourself. And Neville Goddard goes over this really, really well in this illustration. So let's go ahead and jump right into this. This story illustrates the successful use of the law by a New York business executive. In the fall of 1950, an executive of one of New York's prominent banks discussed with me a serious problem with which he was confronted. He told me that the outlook for this personal progress and advancement was very dim, having reached middle age and feeling that a marked improvement in position and income was justified. He had talked it out with his superiors, but they told him that any major improvement was impossible, and that if he was dissatisfied with his job, he could look for a new one. This, of course, only increased his uneasiness. So this businessman is trying to increase his income, but he keeps coming up to roadblocks, okay? So he's coming and hitting brick walls with trying to increase his income. But later he finds that it's only a change of concept that is needed, a concept of himself that lines up with the amount of money that he wants to make. Because if you want to make a certain amount of money, you want to make $1 million a year, your concept of yourself needs to mirror that, because you have to be able to sustain that amount of money. You have to be able to line up with your beliefs and everything you consent to be true in your world in order to do that. So Neville Goddard starts teaching him that here. And when this businessman is actually discussing this with Neville Goddard, he explains that he had no great desire for big money, but that he had to have a substantial income in order to maintain his home comfortably and to provide for the education of his children in good schools and good colleges in the future. This he found impossible on his present income. The refusal of the bank to assure him of any advancement in their near future resulted in a feeling of discontent and an intense desire to secure a better position with considerably more money. Okay, so he doesn't really desire to have more money, but he needs more money to live his comfortable life and to make sure that his children go to the colleges and universities that they want to go to. And he's tried to get an advancement with his current job, trying to get his salary increased, but he keeps being turned down. So what needs to change here is his concept of himself, because everything in his world right now is as it is, based on his concept of himself. So this businessman actually did tell Neville Goddard, he confided in him the kind of job that he would like to have where he could be making more money, which is in managing investment funds of a large institution such as a foundation or a great university. And this is where Neville Goddard explains to him that he needs to change his concept of himself in order for his exterior world to change. That you have to change your internal world before your external world is going to change. So in explaining the law of assumption, Neville Goddard states that his present situation was only a manifestation of his concept of himself. And Neville Goddard declared that if this businessman wanted to change the circumstances in which he found himself, he could do so only by changing his concept of himself. In order to bring about this change of consciousness and thereby change his situation, I asked him to follow this procedure every night just before falling asleep. Okay, before we go any further, I want to explain about changing your concept of yourself. Whether you're affirming, whether you're scripting, whether you're visualizing, it doesn't matter. What these things are doing is changing your concept of yourself. Your concept of yourself is the fundamental aspect of everything that you experience in your 3D world. And when you visualize being a multi-millionaire, you're visualizing having all this money. That is changing your inner dialogue. It's changing your concept of yourself. And then that is projected out into your 3D world and changing that. Transferring to different parallel realities is exactly how that works. So ultimately what you're doing when you're affirming, scripting, or visualizing, all you're doing is changing your concept or your personality of yourself. And when you change your personality or concept of yourself, your inner dialogue changes. That means you're observing a different world. You're transferring to a different world now through the parallel realities. So you're shifted and you're projecting and observing an entirely different world by what you consent to be true based on your inner dialogue, which is created from your affirmations, from your visualizing, from your scripting. So that's how you change all these things from within yourself and then transfer to these different parallel realities. All right, so here's the procedure that Neville Goddard gave this businessman to perform as he's falling asleep every single night. So Neville Goddard says, okay, so in your imagination, you are to feel that you are retiring at the end of one of the most important and successful days of your entire life. Of your entire life, you need to feel this. You need to create this. You need to feel that you are at the end of the day, one of the most important day, the most successful day that you've ever had in your entire life, and you are falling asleep with that feeling. You are to imagine that you actually closed a deal that very day to join the kind of organization that you desired to join, and exactly in that capacity that this executive wanted. So you need to create that scene, that feeling, and however you create that feeling, whether that's through scripting, visualizing, or affirming, you need to capture that feeling and make it real as if it's happening and it already happened all day long. Like you were creating these business deals all day long. All day long, you're creating this business deal. You're successful that you are now working for this company where you're making this much money, this foundation that you desire to work for. And create that feeling and then fall asleep with that feeling. And Neville Goddard further explains and suggests to him that if he succeeded in completely filling his mind with this feeling of now working for this foundation and having the job and having this successful business deal, and then saturating his mind with this feeling, that he would experience a sense of relief. He would sense this relief, and then he would fall asleep with this sense of satisfaction and relief that he has now closed this deal that implies that he is now living the life that he wants. And what that does is it changes his foundational concept of himself. Then he tricks the subconscious mind. So he's falling asleep with this new personality of actually doing all these things all day long and creating that, even though it didn't actually happen in his 3D world, he's creating these events to happen and then creating the feeling following those events and then falling asleep with that. And what that does is changes your concept of yourself. Whether you're scripting, visualizing, or affirming, that's what it's changing, is your concept of yourself, your inner dialogue. And then that's when you trick the subconscious mind and project yourself or change and alter your parallel reality. You're transferred to that parallel reality that lines up with this new version of yourself. And once he creates this feeling and falls asleep with it, he falls asleep in this new mood or this new concept of himself, the uneasiness and discontent would be a thing of the past. He would no longer be impressing the subconscious mind with the old limitations of uneasiness and discontent. He's falling asleep with this as a successful new person, a new being. And Neville Goddard assured this businessman that if he did this faithfully every single night, that he would get the position that he wanted, that he desired. He would absolutely get that position in no time. All right, so this was the week of December. So he's explaining these exercises. He goes over all this with the businessman in December. So night after night, without exception, the businessman followed the procedure that Neville Goddard gave him. And early in February, a director of one of the wealthiest foundations in the world asked him if he would be interested in joining the foundation in an executive capacity handling investments. After some brief discussion, he accepted. Today, at a substantially higher income and with the assurance of steady progress, this man is in a position far exceeding all that he had hoped for. Okay, so this man, this executive, he followed Neville Goddard's procedure. He created a new concept of himself that reflected, or that was based on the belief that he now had this job working for this foundation and handling these investments. So he successfully used the law of assumption to change his concept of himself as he's falling asleep, as he's drifting into his subconscious lover, which is the subconscious mind, and telling the subconscious mind now that he is a different person. So that's going to shift his parallel realities to line up with this new future. This new future that he desired was created by the change of his concept of himself, which this is exactly why I designed my sleep meditations the way that I do, because they create this exact feeling that this executive created as he was falling asleep, but he had to do it manually. Okay, so he didn't have a lot of assistance. So it took a couple months for him to do this from December to February. But I'm thinking this can happen faster, especially if you have some help. Like I create my meditations, my sleep meditations, where you can actually fall asleep and be instructed as you're falling asleep, even with these affirmations, these questions that are being asked to you within the meditations that are creating the same feeling that we just went over in this. And I'm going to put that playlist to my meditations on a card on the screen at the end of this video. All right, guys, I love you guys very much. Don't forget to give me one thing you guys are grateful for or anything you want me to cover in the future. Leave that, any ideas you have for content, leave that in the comments box below, and beware of the scammers impersonating me in the comments. So if you get a response or a reply to your comment and they're saying that they're me, they want you to contact them at a specific number, WhatsApp, Telegram, or Snapchat. That is not me. That's a scammer impersonating me. So do not respond to that. Just report them. All right. I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next video.